Thanks for listening to the Rock Guitar Confidential podcast with Scott and Ryan. Hey, remember when you were an awkward preteen and you had a crush on that guitar, but you were just too zitty and awkward to go talk to it, and then you went home and just read all of your guitar magazines? Today we're going to open old wounds and talk about our early guitar crushes and all those magazines that kept us company. Thanks for listening.
Any other pasta that we find to be untrustworthy? I mean, what is ziti hiding? It's got all the empty
right,
spaces
yeah, like
there.
lasagna's got the most to hide.
Yeah, I think so. That's the least trustworthy of all the pastas.
Yeah,
I think so.
Yeah, dude, absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, I, just to dive into some cinema talk real quick.
Mm-hmm. Is that the moving pictures I've heard so much about?
Ooh, yeah, that's good stuff.
Fancy moving picture shows.
So I think you heard that the new Buzz Lightyear movie just like totally flopped at the box office.
Oh yeah, I heard something about that. Yeah.
Dude, I know how to save Toy Story.
Oh really? Okay, so what is it?
Okay, so Woody and Buzz Lightyear are like they're trekking through the darkened closet of the boy's bedroom. Right.
And inside there they find Roman Polanski.
The skinned body of Roman Polanski hanging from a coat hanger. I don't know. What's another Toy Story character?
You know what I would actually like
there's
to do?
Like Woody.
There's a different direction like that. Here's what it is. Buzz Lightyear and Woody, they kidnapped this family in a Winnebago in New Mexico and forced them to drive them down to Mexico. To go to a strip club where they're going to meet up with their partner, right?
Can Paul Gilbert do the soundtrack going down to Mexico?
You could if you wanted to.
Nice.
They get to the club and they take part in a strip club scene sort of thing where they putting money in a stripper's belt. This is Buzz Lightyear doing this, and then it turns out the whole place is filled.
It'd be like Woody was like stripping to support his drug habit. But go on.
That happened on the way down.
Got it.
But that's going to be off camera. I'm not going to show that. So and then it turns out that the stripper is actually a vampire. And then he turns Woody into a vampire, and then Buzz Lightyear has to kill Woody, and then basically survives a blood-soaked evening and comes out of it totally ruined as a human being and has to run off with his drug money.
It's like From Dusk Till Toy Story.
Exactly. I think that's exactly how you save that movie. You make it like a dark Tarantino-esque ending where he's like doing blow and like wiping the blood off his face.
How about like the Tarantino plot for the Woody like solo movie, right? And then, like, for Lightyear 2, Buzz Lightyear discovers, like, he gets woken up from hypersleep, right, by a distress signal planet, and then him and, like, his team go down and discover a derelict spaceship.
Yep.
While he's down there, he discovers these eggs.
Yeah.
And then one of them, like, an alien, like, shoots out and latches onto his visor.
Oh, okay.
And then, like, impregnates him. And then later on, he's back in the ship, and they think he's doing okay.
Yeah.
But then, like, an alien bursts out of his chest.
For a split second, I thought you were going to say
hilarity ensues.
It's true. I mean, because there's nothing more hilarious than watching someone's chest get burst with a alien.
If it's Buzz Lightyear, yeah.
I was thinking you were going to say they went down to the derelict spaceship and found a bunch of eggs that said Cadbury and that they were delicious.
But
and everyone had a happy time and had friendship for
That's the existing Disney plot. See, Scott, I'm trying to be part of the solution, man.
I'm trying to just deny the solution. I want to make it like it's, and then it turns out there's like a magical fairy there that comes out, and when she touches them, they lose all hatred in their heart and only feel love for all living things.
Oh man!
And then everyone has chocolate and dances around to like a party in the USA.
And then Disney charges $20 a ticket.
Exactly.
Or $10 a month for streaming.
So I do have to say, when it comes to the cinema, I am part of the problem. I have to say it's definitely true.
It's all right, man.
I'm
We're
not,
still friends.
Not helping at all in that scenario. But.
Sorry, man. You know me by now. I'm a believer in nothing replaces persistence.
That's true, except for time, which is persistent, just like persistence.
The persistence of time.
It couldn't be more persistent.
Yes,
that's how much
Anthrax taught us that.
That's true.
Yes.
Many things that Anthrax taught us.
All right. Well, hey, everybody. Welcome back to Rock Guitar Confidential with Scott and Ryan.
I am Scott. That is
Ryan.
Yes. And today we are going to talk about a couple of things. We're going to start off with our 13-year-old guitar crush. This is not about a girl playing guitar that we thought was hot. This is about what guitar did we want so badly when we were 13 years old, and describing it in almost, horribly prolific detail what we wanted. And then we want to tie that to something else. That's something that I feel like this generation. Oh my God, that sounds so old. I hear myself say that.
Yeah, there's a couple things we're going to be saying a lot, and that's this generation.
You darn kids, you don't understand.
Get off my lawn.
What for rock and roll? But no, we're
and
talking
also
about
grunge apocalypse.
Yeah,
I think
true.
we're going to trademark that.
That's true.
Yep.
But like guitar magazines that we grew up with, which were the best. That was the coolest thing ever. That was like my version of a comic book. Basically, was that. I didn't read comic books. I read guitar magazines. So let's start off. So let's think the guitar. Let's start with you, Ryan. What was your guitar crush? What did you dream about owning? What guitar when you were 13 was like the apple of your eye?
There's a couple. The first two that come to mind. One is the Ibanez 540 Pi. Like as in the number 3.14 and then like a bunch of other numbers.
Oh, I thought it came with like a voucher where you can get free pie. That was like what a great.
That would be rad.
What a great tie-in that would be. You know what I mean?
Well, if you're listening, Hoshino Corporation, then please run with that.
Sales goal waiting to happen right
Absolutely,
there.
man. Pie is an incentive.
It's true. Yeah.
Yeah. More so as I get older.
That's true. And I don't think that's really any magical trick. Everybody knows that pie's the best.
Hey, in the British market, it could be like mince pie.
That's true.
Yep.
Or just like what do they call them, bangers, whatever those are.
Okay, so when I was 17, I used to go to this bar.
Okay, story time with Brian.
Right, and I figured it was like a British pub, and I thought. If when I went up to order a beer, if I also ordered a banger with my beer, then that would be something an adult would do. So, like that was my teenage reasoning.
More specifically, an adult in like London would do. Yeah.
Well, I figured when in London.
Yeah. There's nothing more sophisticated, by the way, than ordering a beer and a banger.
Right. Like a stupid teenager would just like. I thought, well, a stupid kid's just gonna like.
That's right up there with like vodka
domestic,
martini shaken, not stirred, Mr. Bond. It's like right up there with that.
Fun fact. If it's made with vodka, it isn't a martini.
That's absolutely true.
It has to be made with gin. So yeah, that's my history with bangers and with underage drinking.
That's true.
Back when I was a kid,
there's a lot of bad places that the words bangers and underage drinking can go. I'm glad that was
especially if it's a Miley Cyrus album.
Yes, that's true. I'm glad
that's kind of the worst place.
Stayed in the PG zone. I'm actually pretty happy with that. Well,
thanks, man.
Hey, man, it's a party in the USA, and we're all just invited. You know what I mean?
That should be a topic for a future podcast, like cool guitar riffs from like crappy artists.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so, what's the guitar crush though? Like, what's the guitar
crush? The Ibanez 540 Pi.
So tell us all about it. What's the deal with that guitar?
All right. So it's like an RG, but the bottom horn is longer than the top horn.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, and a lot of people call it the Alex Skolnick signature model, but it never had his name on it or anything.
Yeah, it's just he was playing it back in that time.
And the body was it's like a modern RG or gem shape, but it's a little offset, and the lower horn is longer than the top horn,
which is a cool idea.
I just thought that was the coolest thing. I used to draw it on my textbooks, like when you're daydreaming when you're a teenager.
Yeah.
And you made your book covers out of grocery bags.
Yeah, exactly. And I perfected my Van Halen logo and all that stuff.
Oh hell yeah! Oh and then like it was a point of pride how well you could draw the Metallica logo either in ink on the grocery bag book cover or using whiteout on your black backpack.
Yeah, that's true.
Yes, those were the two. That's how you like signaled competence.
Or depending on which era you're in, like the patches on your denim jacket.
Oh yeah, dude, totally, absolutely, man. So yeah, I'd say the Ibanez 540 Pi. I was just captivated by that design. Like I would daydream about calling Warmouth and being like, "Hey, I have this idea for a body. Can you build it?"
Was it just Alex Skolnick playing it that got you excited about it, or was it just the guitar itself?
It was just the guitar itself. I just, I've always wanted to have an experience in life that was a little different than what everybody else had. Mm-hmm. So, for example, I used to drive a Saab. Why? Like, the truth is that, like, not many people out there were driving one. Yeah. I liked that I got to put the ignition in the console. Like, any little thing like that, because, I mean,
it's a little bit of personal turf, sort of, that's just yours.
Something like that, yeah. I mean, maybe it's a personality flaw. I don't know. But I always just, I really do value being off the beaten path a little bit.
Individuality,
yeah. It's
you're not going to go to a cabin in the woods and write a manifesto, sort of. Off
no, not at all.
Yeah, exactly.
No, I mean that would be a lot of like hand work
And
that
I think
I could spend practicing guitar.
I think
instead.
the main reason you're against that is because someone already did that. So like that's not cool. I'm not gonna do that.
Dude, totally.
I gotta
man,
be my own person. You know what I mean?
There already was a
Yeah,
Unabomber.
exactly.
So, yeah, totally.
It's already treaded territory. I don't have to go over that. You know
Yeah,
what I mean?
exactly. Been there, done that.
Got to find some other new thing to do. You know, maybe
Yeah.
I'll find a way to communicate with the sharks and see if they can be bent to my will or something. You know, something
Ooh,
like that. That's a thing.
nice.
Something that would be like just out there enough for a Bond villain to try.
Yeah,
I think that's,
dude, absolutely,
That's
man.
fertile territory to be thinking
Oh,
about.
dude, okay, dude. I know how to fix Shark Week. Okay.
No, how about the Meg too?
Dude, you know what? Talk about a movie that was destroyed by family friendliness.
Oh, you think the Meg? Really?
Oh, I know it was.
There's
Like-
nothing more family friendly than a 50-foot great white shark
No,
eating people.
there are. I'm dead serious. There's interviews with Jason Statham where they're like, he's like, I thought the movie was going to be more of like an R-rated thing, but they took out a lot of the action so that, like, preteens could watch it.
That makes sense. Well, I mean, that's there's probably a reason for that. I'm sure.
It makes sense from a corporate greed standpoint, but
Yeah.
it's a shark movie.
Yeah, they want it to be more Jurassic Park and less like Jaws.
Yeah, Jurassic Shark.
Yeah, that's basically what they want it to
Lame.
be. Yeah.
Boo. So the 540 Pi, I just thought it was the coolest thing ever. I just thought, I just thought the body shape was cool, and it was
is.
just.
I remember that guitar. That
and
was
I
really
just
cool.
and I
Yeah.
just knew that if I
It had
had
a reverse
one,
headstock too, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I just knew if I had one, I'd be the only dude that had one.
Yeah.
Without having to get something excessively pointy and unwieldy.
Yeah.
I always thought the Warlock was a cool body design, but the ones that I've played weren't well balanced.
No, not at all. And the case for those things is like the size of a door, so it's really difficult.
Right, or you have to get like the taco gig bag, and those are enormous. And when it comes to playing an odd body shape like that, that's unbalanced where the headstock dives, pretty much your only hope is to use a leather strap that kind of grabs onto your shoulder.
Mm-hmm. So it doesn't keep diving for the floor every time you let your hand off.
Right, and I'm a nylon strap kind of guy.
Yeah.
I'm real partial to DiMarzio clip locks now, but even before that, it was strap locks with like a Fort Bryant or an Ernie Ball
and
strap.
It's still a nylon strap. Yeah.
Yeah, like I just don't, I like having like cool solid colors on things, but like patterns and designs and stuff, I never thought that was all that rad. That says like quote recreational musician to me.
Yeah, it's like a road worn guitar or something like that. I'm gonna buy like a road worn Telly or something. It's like going, it's brand new, but okay, fine, it's road worn.
That's
sure.
right.
It's funny along those lines. This is not my guitar crush, but I remember when I was in music school, I was feeling particularly depressed and angry about the grunge apocalypse. And I remember, I think it was my birthday. I asked my mom to just wire me like $200 or something, like from birthday. It's like that. She's like, "What do you want?" I'm like, "Okay, I'm gonna go find the most '80s guitar I can possibly get my hands on."
Oh yeah.
And I remember my buddies and I from music school. We went down. It was in Hollywood. We went down to La Cienega Boulevard. There's a place called Black Market Music, which is kind of like
nice.
It's like all kinds of gear. They walked in, they had rows of old Marshall JCM 900s and stuff. And I looked around that place.
People from the guitar like black market underworld.
Yeah.
Like there's like a dude with an eye patch.
It's like the guys who are like musicians in Hollywood who can't pay the rent. They'll bring in, they'll like basically sell their Marshall to these guys, and then they'll sell it back to you.
Wow.
That's kind of what it was. And you walk in, there's just tons of stuff. So I ended up finding a like 1985 vintage Kramer Voyager, which is a star-shaped guitar.
Ooh, yeah.
With bright red with sparkles, single humbucker Floyd Rose. And I remember I have to have this guitar as this 1996. And I need something that screams, 1985.
Was that with the 3+3 headstock? 3 tuners
it was
on one
six
side?
on the side. Six on the side.
in
So it
line.
had like the same kind of like Eddie Van Halen's Kramer, like headstock was very similar to that. Like the older early 80s version of the Kramer
Okay,
headstock.
so not quite like Akira Takasaki's
No,
star.
it was very similar to Akira Takasaki's star, but it was more CC DeVille Talk Dirty to Me video kind of star.
Okay.
And I remember just loving that guitar. I bought it and I took it to music school for like the next 3 months. And it's just, to me, it was like a giant middle finger to the 90s.
Yeah, that must have been a hit in jazz improv.
Oh
class.
yeah, fuck them. That was my attitude then too.
Yeah.
It was like, I'm gonna play this CC DeVille Talk Dirty to Me guitar. I know
Yeah.
it's 1996, but I don't give a shit. I'm gonna play this Kramer Voyager bright red sparkle guitar with a Floyd Rose. Because meantime everyone's like looking for Les Paul Customs or Les Paul Juniors or Jaguars
The whole
or
vintage guitar
And I
thing.
wanted vintage to me. It was like 1988 guitars, 1987 guitars back then. So anyway, I had that. Eventually, I kind of went back to playing. My main guitar when I was in music school was a Washburn N2. is a Nuno signature.
Dude, the one guitar I wish I had never sold is a Washburn N4.
Oh, I never owned the N4. I only owned the N2, but I liked that guitar a lot.
It was a great guitar.
It was really had the Bill Lawrence in the bridge and stuff. It was really cool.
Yeah, I was too young to appreciate it, man. I actually that was the first American-made guitar I ever owned.
Oh, nice. Those were great guitars, man. Washburn was making good stuff.
It was sold to me by a guy that I used to work with, a dude named Guy Tickner. If you're out there, hi Guy. He was the touring guitar player for Engelbert Humperdinck.
Oh, yeah. I think you've told me this story before.
Yeah, he came off tour, and he sold me his N4 and a Rocktron Chameleon preamp.
That's a great preamp, man.
That's
dude. Actually still in demand. People are looking for Rocktron Chameleons on eBay and on like Reverb and stuff like that, because those are like now considered vintage, basically.
Wow.
Yeah, those old things. That's crazy. Yeah, you know what's funny is, but that whole time period was like what people wanted was exactly the opposite of what I wanted, and I wish I had more cash at the time, because I remember walking in a place. There's a place called Freedom Guitars in Hollywood. You'd walk in there and there'd be just Rhodes, Kramers, and Ibanez's, because nobody wanted a guitar that was like a super strat with a Floyd Rose in like 1996, 1997.
Right, they all wanted thrift store junk.
Yeah, they wanted a double cut, Les Paul Jr., or they wanted like a Jaguar or something like that.
Yeah, a Junkwar.
Yeah, exactly.
Ooh, that's a good one.
Yeah, but
Junkwar.
that is very descriptive as well.
Yeah.
So if I had more cash, I would have like really feasted upon that. But that would be great.
Right.
But the long story short, getting to what my ultimate guitar crush with that when I was like 13, what I thought was the coolest guitar. Let's just put it this way: Eddie Van Halen's Kramer, he played on like the 5150 tour, I thought was the coolest guitar. But that never even drawn in my mind that I would ever even have a possibility of getting something like that.
Right.
So I didn't even consider that. But the one that was my just dream above all dreams was the Kramer Night Swan. At that time, I remember
those were cool.
Seeing the Kramer Night Swan and thinking like, man, that is the coolest guitar ever. I mean, it had the Floyd.
Didn't that have like an extended range, like 27 frets?
Yeah, on the very bottom, on the bottom
string,
three, and it had like the Floyd reverse headstock, had the cool graphic. I remember it had like the interesting, like the two humbucker and a single, but there was no neck pickup. That kind of thing. I remember thinking that was really cool, and I just saw that guitar, and I remember seeing Vivian Campbell in the ad and thinking like, that is the coolest guitar I've ever seen. That is so cool. And never ever got one. I know they reissued it. The new version of Kramer has reissued it.
Yeah, it's an import.
It is an import, but that's because they know they're going to sell more if they do the import thing.
Man, if I were going to buy one, it's got to come from the States or Japan. I don't want an Indonesian.
No, I agree. But that being said, I think some of those are made in Korea. I'm not sure where it's going. Korea makes decent stuff nowadays.
They do now. I think there's a certain attitude. The thing about the Korean import guitars, like they're built, like the precision in their build quality is excellent.
Yeah.
I think the finishes are too thick. It's very thick polyurethane. Like I feel like I'm playing a Jelly Belly.
I think that's kind of a sign of that the price point more than anything else, because most guitars in that price point have that same sort of finish. It's just easier. It's more uniform if they do it that way.
Yeah, totally.
I mean, this is something. It kind of reminds me of like my my Charvel and my EVH. It would be something that would just literally be like a fun conversation guitar. That's not gonna. I'm not gonna use. I got my VGAs for guitars. I'm gonna use.
Yeah.
But for something I would use for just like a fun. Look at this. This makes me feel like I'm 13 again or whatever. It's like it kind of reminds me of like that time period and how cool those guitars were.
Dude, you just reminded me of my next big teenage guitar crush.
What's that?
Late 80s snakeskin graphic BC Rich Gunslinger. If you watch the King Diamond video for Sleepless Nights, that's the guitar that Pete Black is playing. I think it also had diamond inlays like on an ebony fretboard too.
I was gonna say, didn't Tracy Guns have that guitar?
He might have, and that's cool too. Some of the recent LA Gun stuff is pretty badass.
There's always been good LA Gun stuff. They're
Absolutely.
not. It's not consistent. There's like really good stuff on every one of their albums though.
Yeah, they released a single called Speed a couple years ago.
I heard it.
Yeah, Tracy Guns and Phil Lewis on vocals. Phil Lewis, formerly of the band Girl, which featured Phil Collin.
Yeah, exactly. Those guys were bandmates back in the day, in the pre Def Leppard days.
That's right, man. That's right. So yeah, I always wanted a snakeskin graphic BC Rich Gunslinger. I think they can. I don't know if they can be had new anymore. But I mean, any of them that are out in the wild are now like $3,000-$4,000.
Because everybody's looking for like the handful. Right? It reminds me a lot of another one of my crushes, which is the Ibanez Voyager. Like the Red Beach model guitar.
Yeah.
That's an awesome guitar.
Oh,
dude,
I was
cannot find it anywhere. Like if you do, and it's crazy expensive because everything that's out there has been bought. You know what I mean?
Dude, it's funny. They just released, it's from Ibanez Premium line of guitars. They're the ones that are being built in India.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like in between the Korean import stuff, but it's like a rung like below the Japanese Prestige stuff.
Yeah, I know. It's like not quite as good as the Prestige. Yeah.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And dude, they just released one that's, natural mahogany body, gold hardware, EMG pickups. It's almost everything. It's so Reb Beach.
It's almost sort of like the Sir guitar that he plays almost, right? Like
right, and I think he's a Sir endorsee now.
Yeah, he has been forever.
He has a Sir endorsement.
Basically, his guitars. I mean, I actually had a guitar lesson with Reb like about a year ago.
Right.
I want to say, which is pretty cool. And he was telling me that like that guitar that Sir with all natural finish is like the guitar I used for everything.
Yeah.
He said he played it on like some Widowmaker stuff. He did sessions for Dee Snider.
Right.
He played it on the Alice Cooper stuff. He played it on all the Winger stuff. He played it in Whitesnake. I mean, he's that guitar. It's been his main guitar.
That's sick. I wonder if he did Love Is for Suckers.
I don't think he did. I mean, he might have.
The Dee Snider connection.
I know he did play with Twisted Sister for a while too. I'm sure. He's done so many sessions. It's ridiculous. He did a bunch of Shaka Khan stuff. He did like. I think he did some Bee Gees stuff too. I want to say
any of the Fiona Flanagan stuff.
Yeah, Fiona.
I think he's the guy.
Yep. Yep. So I mean, but that's the guitar he used because he had back in the day, like most good working musicians in the time, he had the one nice guitar. That's all he played. Everything was that guitar. He probably had to go in the debt up to his eyeballs to buy it. It was like a $3,000 guitar at the time. But he's used it ever since, and it's tough. I can tell you, once you play a really high quality instrument, it's almost impossible
to go back.
Yeah,
that's right. Yeah, once I got that, like right before I acquired that Washburn N4, my first electric guitar was the plywood Memphis that Mike Gardner was nice enough to install the $250 Kaler flyer.
That's way even more expensive than the guitar you bought. The bridge is way more expensive.
Yeah, yeah.
So funny.
And then the next guitar that it had the licensed Floyd Rose that was pretty good. It was a Hamer Slammer series Santara.
I know.
It was actually a groovy guitar for it had sort of like the dinky 7/8 scale strap body with the output jack that was on the bottom but pointed up so it went through your strap.
Yep.
Really, really cool guitar. I wish Hamer were still around making super strats.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that time period, it's funny. Even Gibson at one point was making a version of a super strat at that time because that just shows you how much things changed. Like they weren't selling Les Pauls very much. So they came out, I think it was like around 90. They came out with this guitar that wasn't quite a Strat, but you can tell it was kind of a Strat with like a Floyd Rose and stuff. And
it was kind of like Gibson saying, how do I do this?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's almost like Fender trying to make it like a loud rock amp. You know what I mean? That's until they got EVH, they really, for whatever reason, I'm always amazed by this.
Well,
by the way,
before EVH, Fender had an amp that released in the mid-late 2000s called a Supersonic, which kind of formed the foundation of the EVH. And those Supersonics are good sounding.
There was an amp in the late 80s too that they had. I want to say it was like a Tone Master or something like that. There was like some kind of, I remember Greg Howe was using it, and it sounded pretty good. But for whatever reason, I don't know why a company as big with as many smart people and as much resources as Fender has always been befuddled by a rock amp.
Yeah,
I don't know why that is. And the same with why can't Marshall make a clean channel worth of shit? I don't understand why that is. Like, why are this company that's been around forever with all these great engineers and all these people who know amp builds, why can't they do that?
It's circuitry, it's science,
it's amazing to me that they just can't figure out the other part of it. It's crazy, and that's why I think that opened up a big opening for bands, not bands, but for things like Saldano and Diesel and Wagner and stuff.
We got Soldano.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, that all kind of opened
VHT.
up the VHT, and of course, there's a million other ones now.
Man, we're going to have a whole episode
Diesel.
just about amplifiers.
Yeah. But I mean, that opened that window for that to happen, which is crazy. So. Thank you for listening to the Rock Guitar Confidential podcast with Ryan and Scott. Please make sure to rate and subscribe, and let's get back to the Guitar Magazine / Guitar Crushes. It's going to be awesome.
Yeah, absolutely.
Any other guitar crushes?
The Voyager. Boy, well, I was going to say the Voyager, but you said the Voyager.
Oh, damn. Sorry, man.
That's okay.
That shows you how much we do pre-production here. We don't even really know.
I think the podcast is fun when we get to riff.
That's the whole idea.
Yes, indeed.
So actually, music is also fun when you get to riff, too. I've actually found that's
absolutely.
True. Yeah.
Well, I definitely, man, I'm going to harken back to some of our Floyd Rose conversation, but there was just this really cool time when, the Floyd Rose license wasn't necessarily out there yet. So there's all these other companies, trying to create the knockoffs. Like remember Ibanez predecessor to the Edge tremolo? It was like it was just called like the Ibanez Pro tremolo.
I don't remember.
It was like their version of like a Rockinger. You know, so it was a Fulcrum thing, but it didn't have locking saddles.
Yeah.
You know,
which is kind of why
it was kind of
it.
they made a copy of a Rhodes V, like an offset V. Yeah. So, you know, for a while I had a crush on Warlocks.
Yeah.
I thought the Warlock was a cool looking body shape. Honestly, the first time I saw a Warlock body shape was it was a bass guitar. It was Bobby Dahl playing it in Poison.
Oh wow, that's right. Because he used to play that. That's right.
You know, and again, that was during the days when I couldn't rewind it. I couldn't, you know, I didn't have MTV, so I probably saw it at my cousin's house or my buddy's house, and so I just got a flash of it.
Yeah,
and just thought, whoa, what is that? You know, it's bright neon green and it's pointy.
Yeah.
And none of my friends have one.
Yeah, it's true. And it was hard to find those too back in the day too. There wasn't a lot of like BC Rich dealers, at least in Sacramento.
Yeah, there was mystique.
Yeah,
there was mystique about that. I've always been also a fan of. I wanted an igniter for a while, which is a body shape that not a lot of people know about.
You know, I was really into the graphic guitars back in the day because I got two guitars that come to my mind that I really was really wanting bad when I was a kid. And one was the one that Andy Timmons used in Danger. He had this really cool guitar that had like this weird like comic book kind of graphic on it.
Was it the dude in the trench coat with the fedora from?
No, it wasn't that. It was a different thing. I saw it again recently, and I thought that is the coolest looking Kramer I've ever seen. And then there's Reb Beach's guitar he used in early Winger days, which is that Kramer. That thing. I was really into Kramers when I was a kid. I thought all my favorite guitar players used Kramers. You know, Eddie was playing a Kramer. You know, it was Charvels. I didn't really know about too much, so it was like I knew that Jake played a Charvel and Warren played a Charvel. I thought they were super cool.
I had a crush on the ESP Jakey Lee for a while.
Yeah,
I thought it was
exactly
really cool how
about.
there was different gauge fret wire past the 12th fret.
Yeah, that is cool.
It was like what, medium jumbo up to 12, and then it went to jumbo or something like that.
Or Charvel is doing the same thing as well. I think he's, if I'm not mistaken, the same thing.
Very, very cool stuff.
Kramer was crushing back in the day, though. Back then, they had so many cool guitars that it seemed like and they all played really great too.
Yeah.
It wasn't like they were some crap. You know, as they started making them more mass market, the quality took a nosedive.
Again, the imports become crap. But so I vividly remember my grandmother and my aunt walking me into guitar player music when I was 11 to sign me up for my first guitar lesson. It was right after Christmas, after I got my crappy plywood classical guitar.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And a guy named Matt Pennington was standing behind the counter with his Kramer Beretta with a beer mug graphic on it.
Oh wow!
And the whole time he was like taking down my contact information with his right hand, he was holding the guitar face forward to me with his left hand.
Yeah, drool coming down your face.
Just drool. I just thought that was the coolest thing I'd ever seen. So I had a crush on Matt Pennington's Kramer Beretta graphic guitar.
They were so cool. All those graphic guitars were so cool back then. I mean, it's just like
so cool.
As cool as it gets. You know what I mean? It's amazing to me that that isn't still a thing. You know, it's really weird to like. Why do you want to have a guitar? I mean, I'm kind of a hypocrite. Here's all my main guitars are like really nice figured maple and stuff. They have really, really classic looking guitars, but they still look like cool super strats. They're not like, but I do have a soft spot for the graphic guitars still. I think they're just so cool.
Absolutely.
You know? But I've had a feeling though that if we say we grew up in like the early mid '60s, we'd have huge crushes on like gold top Les Pauls and classic Fenders too. That's what we grew up with. You know what I mean?
I think gold top Les Pauls are kind of cool, just because of the story behind them. You know, Gibson. Their secret sauce on that guitar was the maple cap on the mahogany body, but they painted the tops gold so that Fender wouldn't know what the secret sauce was.
Yeah. It's like a little industrial espionage going on.
Right, yeah, exactly. Industrial, guitar wars.
Yeah. But I mean, I think it's so funny how what you think is cool and amazing is really colored by your perspective growing up. Like if you think, because like to me, like those were the coolest guitars I can even imagine, you know, but I'm sure if I grown up in a different time period, I would probably thought, oh, this is the coolest guitar I can ever imagine, because that's like what I grew up with. So
yeah, it's a good thing that you and I grew up during objectively, and this has been scientifically proven, the greatest time period for guitar ever known.
I mean, anybody who denies that, it's
totally
it's science. You can't argue it. You know what I mean?
It's inarguable.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Peer reviewed. I'm pretty sure there's like over 50 or 60 like peer reviewed papers
you know what?
on the subject.
Hey, we're peers. We just reviewed it.
It's
Case
true.
closed.
We did. Yep.
So
exactly.
here's another guitar crush. So, which I wouldn't have been aware of this guitar if I hadn't seen the ad for it in Guitar for the Practicing Musician magazine,
which is probably the greatest guitar magazine that ever existed.
So good.
Thank you, John Sticks, who was the editor of that.
Nice. Yeah, these days they could release like Guitar for the Not Practicing Musician.
They could have then too.
That might, yeah, true. I know that might be a hit these days. Too,
We know it's funny though. Along those lines, what was the guitar? I'm sorry.
The guitar was Phil Collin from Def Leppard, his original signature model.
Yeah, I'm talking about the one that's got like the top horn that's like long and it's got the like almost non-existent bottom horn sort of.
It's kind of like a single cut, but it's not a telly.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about.
I think didn't they also call it a Concorde?
Wasn't it a PC one? I thought that was
the PC one. That's what it was called.
That's one used in the Love Bites video, right?
Yeah, it was solid white, and it also had kind of the top was arched. I think.
I know exactly what you're talking about. That was a cool guitar.
Man, that was a cool guitar.
I never ever saw anyone but him play that. I'd never seen that anywhere in mass market.
Yeah, it's almost like the body shape was sort of a derivative of the paintbrush logo shown guitars that were made by Jackson.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah. Which I also had a crush on that guitar too. So there we go. There's a double crush.
Well, that kind of brings us to the guitar magazine thing. Is back in the day, to me, there's like the two big. Well, there's a third one that I wasn't as into, but the Guitar for the Practicing Musician and Guitar World were like the peanut butter and jelly of my life back in the day. Guitar Player to a much lesser extent, because Guitar Player I always felt was sort of stuck in like the 60s and 70s.
They still are.
Yeah, but I think like the Guitar for Practicing Musician was like the newest guys were always on it. And
the cutting edge thing.
Yeah, and then Guitar World right on their heels was the same thing. And I always thought they were like the two big ones. And I mean, what made Guitar for the Practicing Musician so great is that it had so many awesome transcriptions. It was as much about learning music as it was about reading about music.
Yep.
And Guitar World was similar. They had some good transcriptions, but what was cool about Guitar World is they had awesome lessons. Like you go in there, and I remember like really digging into some of the lessons. I remember like Vito Bratta did lessons on inversions. Nice. I remember Beach was doing talking about the tapping technique and stuff like that. Yeah. And I remember like they have Steve Vai coming in, write like a whole long thing. It's funny, when I was very frustrated as a guitar student back when I was like probably 12 or 13, I got an issue of Guitar World magazine, something that was called the Metal Primer in the back. I'll never forget it because the cover was Red Beach, Vito Bratta, and Zach Wilde were all on the cover, and it said the Young Guns of Guitar. And in the back, there's like a 10-page metal primer, and it talked about things like harmony and scale steps and things like that. I swear I learned more from that little 12-page metal primer than I did in 3 years of guitar lessons. I remember like that when I got to music school, like a lot of what I understood about harmony and scales came from that stinking little 12-page thing in the back of Guitar World.
Yeah, that's cool, man.
And Guitar for the Practicing Musician was the same thing. You go in there and you'd see, gosh, I want to play, say Unchained by Van Halen or Lay It Down by Rat or something like that. It would have a pro transcription. You could really come and get the real thing. And it'd have great journalists talking to great guitar players. It was just the greatest thing ever.
Absolutely. And at the same time, I was also buying my metal, like my copies of Rip magazine.
And Metal Edge.
Yeah, Metal Edge. Right? Well, and Metal Edge was always like lame because they had just like the newspaper like quality pages, but like Rip would advertise like all glossy full color pages and stuff, right? But like right along with that was my guitar for my GT FPM, and my Guitar World magazines, which I'm sad to say, my mom threw them all away.
I can't believe that happened. I'm sorry, man.
Yeah, dude, I'm still.
If it makes you feel any better, I lost my whole collection even as I was moving from Los Angeles back to Sacramento. I remember I was loading my Ford Escort on the second trip. I actually drove from L.A. to Sacramento, turned around, drove back again, and on the second trip back up, I was looking at my guitar magazine collection that I had acquired at that point, and I ended up throwing almost all of them away, other than like a handful of ones, just because I literally did not have room in my car to fit them. That's how packed my car was.
That hurts.
And I remember throwing.
You had to put it down yourself.
It's so funny. I remember going up to the apartment and looking down.
You had to put down Old Yeller yourself.
I looked into the dumpster as I was leaving my apartment to go drive back up to Sacramento, and I remember seeing like the magazines just in the dumpster. And then I remember, if I don't know if I imagined this or not, but I swear some dude was like digging through them, like, oh, what's this? I'm like, I betrayed my magazines. I can't believe it.
Somewhere a homeless man like rose to guitar fame. You know what I mean? Like, wouldn't it be hilarious if you're really reading like a Joe Bonamassa interview, and he's like, one day I found all these issues of Guitar World in the dumpster, and I mean, life was tough, and I had the blues, but I didn't know how to express myself until I found all these magazines in a dumpster.
Well, I saved. You know what's funny? I saved the issue with the metal primer, and I don't think I have that anymore, but I did for a long time. I kept that. that issue with me.
Nice.
But I remember like that was the great. And then I remember for a short time, like maybe like 5 years later, I remember feeling a lot of like nostalgia and guilt about that, and then going back to, this is back when that magazine still existed, and I would go and like buy like the reissues of those magazines and stuff, just to kind of not feel so bad. I remember they had the whole Steve Vai thing when he was doing Passion and Warfare, and they like went through track by track, and I remember thinking like,
so good.
I'm like, why did I get rid of that? That was the best. You know what I mean? And
that's rough, man.
But
I still miss, I know somewhere my lesson books, where my teacher would write stuff in the my lesson manuscript books.
Yeah.
I mean, I hope they're still somewhere.
Yeah, but you don't know exactly where that place.
Yeah,
might
like
be.
I'm afraid to find out. Like I have to budget some time to be, upset.
Yeah.
Before I go search.
You have to kind of find a way to like find that mental headspace to deal with the disappointment if they're not there.
Yeah, I'm still getting over my dad throwing away my childhood boombox.
Oh man, our magazines got thrown out too.
And right, I know. Like, well, and here's what's super frustrating. Like, there's still plenty of junk in my folks' garage.
What else is waiting to be
house.
lost?
Yeah. So I went to visit my folks like last year. And I went into the garage to see if my old boombox was there, because I found a cassette tape at my house that featured a radio interview that I did when I was in my late teens for a band I was playing with. But,
cool.
But the heads on the boombox we have here, they don't work. So I thought, no worries. I'll get my trusty old Sanyo.
Yeah.
And, hey, Dad will be happy that some of my stuff's out of the garage.
Yeah.
Right? So I head over. It's gone. And this is the boombox that had.
I threw that out 2 years ago or something.
Yeah, this is the boombox that had my hologram Anthrax sticker on the speaker mesh. Mm-hmm. I bought the record instead of the cassette tape because the record came with the hologram sticker.
Yeah.
That I then put on my boombox that could not play records.
Yeah.
But I had to have the hologram sticker. He threw it away.
Yeah.
And you know what's sitting there in its place?
Do tell.
Nothing.
It's just a big hole in your heart, really.
It is. It's a hole in my heart.
That's true.
Yeah, that's right.
Sense.
I'm wholehearted.
It's true. It's true.
Yeah. So off on a bit of a tangent there, but those magazines were great.
Dude, I mean, Guitar World and Guitar for Practice Position were like the coolest ones. Totally. I mean, well, I think people don't understand too if they're like younger, say like under 25 or something. Like, you don't understand. There was no internet. You couldn't go on and just watch like a 2-hour documentary on anything you want at any point. You can't find a lesson. The only place you can find transcriptions or lessons is in these magazines, and they have interviews with these guys that you just think are gods. They'd be like, we're going to have an interview with Thor today.
Yeah.
We're gonna. It's
totally.
Like it was like,
again, we didn't have a Marvel Cinematic Universe, but we had Guitar Heroes.
Yeah, exactly. But it was like your window into that world. And they talk about their gear, and they talk about their technique and what they're thinking on certain tracks when they were doing it. Those journalists like Brad Talensky, John Sticks.
Yep.
Those guys were really getting into the meat of how these guys thought creatively. And then there'd be great lessons with like, okay, Vito Bratta explains inversions. It's like that's gold. It's like unbelievable.
Yeah, totally.
And I remember like thinking that was the greatest thing ever. And so that went along. I think Guitar for the Practicing Musician went out of business. Like, it was probably mid-90s, I want to say, like 94, 95.
Yeah, well, when
like
guitarists
didn't practice.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah, totally.
There was one very short-lived guitar magazine that was awesome that came out, I think, in the 90s. It was called Guitar Shop Magazine.
Uh-huh.
You ever see that?
I have seen Guitar Shop. I don't think I was ever a regular reader. Although I will say, as a side, topic, one of the great things, too, about those Guitar for the Practicing Musicians and Guitar Worlds was the gear ads.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah,
Dude, I don't know how many times I cut a gear ad out and then like plastered it on my wall along, like right next to my Iron Maiden posters or whatever.
I remember very distinctly a Kramer Guitars ad with Jeff LaBar from Cinderella that was like the coolest thing ever when I was a kid. That was like really, really, like, that was cool. And,
very cool.
And then the Rocktron Chameleon ads and stuff like that. And the Prophecy ads. Those.
Yeah. Well, dude, anything about ESP guitars. I remember ESP. Like, there was only one store in town where you could get ESPs. They were all, upwards of $1,000. Like, it was a pro guitar.
Yeah, unattainable.
Unattainable.
Yeah.
And then, in the 90s, they gave us LTD.
Yeah, and they really just got rid of ESP altogether, unless you're buying the custom shop thing.
In the States, that's changed a little bit. And of course, all the really cool ESP stuff is the stuff they sell in Japan.
Yeah. Ibanez is the same way. There's a bunch of Japanese-only Ibanez guitars.
Yeah,
that
all the
are
J-Craft
only
stuff.
in Japan. You
Yeah,
know?
well, that's because when the grunge apocalypse happened, the people of Japan said no.
They said, we've been through Godzilla. We can handle it.
Yeah, they said, no, we would like to still be good at doing things.
Yeah, it's true.
So we're going to choose to continue being good at musicking and good at building music stuff.
It's ironic. The grunge apocalypse was very centered on only the United States, and like Japan and in Korea, Indonesia, South America, Europe. Apparently, it never happened there. I don't know that the 90s were just
good for them.
It must have been something we all, like a mass delusion. We all just imagined the 90s happened only in America.
Hey, man, we gave the world McDonald's.
I guess it's true.
So there you go.
That's true.
But the gear ads were great, and I remember ESPs were sought after. There was only one store you could get them. So, that's really the main reason I own an ESP M2.
Yeah, those are great guitars. I mean, I remember to me, I always think of ESP. There's two people. I think of Lynch, and I think three: Lynch, and then Michael Wilton and Chris DeGarmo. Those are guys that I really think is the ESP people. You know what I mean?
Ooh, here's a guitar crush. I also wanted a J-Frog.
Is.
Okay, so you know the skull and bones, like it looks like a skeleton grabbing a spinal column, right?
Yeah, the one Lynch played like in the Dream Warriors video.
Yes, that's a J-Frog.
That's the J-Frog?
That's a J. Frog.
Is that the luthier's name or something? Or
it's his mark. I forget what the name of the actual luthier is, but he called them J-Frogs.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, I always wanted a J-Frog.
Those are super cool looking, no doubt about it.
Yeah, totally. Again, none of my friends had one.
That's true. And that's true. It's hard to find those. I mean, it's really hard to find those things.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that what the EVH series is doing with the Stripe stuff now, when I was a kid, I would have lost my mind.
So cool.
It's the coolest thing ever for people who want just a decent guitar that's just the coolest looking thing ever.
Man, how many kids customize their own, crappy entry level electric guitar with electrical tape or whatever to try and.
I mean, I did. I took my crappy guitar and started modifying it, but not like to make it. I didn't do anything cosmetically. I was just like, okay, this thing's so terrible. I have to make this playable. I have to do these things to it. But anyway, I wanted to swing back to the guitar magazines. Guitar Shop magazine was really cool. I like it. It was just gear centric. They would interview artists, but it was always about the gear the artist was using and why and stuff like that. And they would do half the magazine was gear reviews. So they go through and they would do reviews of the 5 different guitars, some acoustics, some PAs, some amps, the whole thing. It was really a very guitar gear centric way of looking at things, and that was really cool at that time because that was like late '90s, I want to say, and it was really interesting to have that gear perspective. And that actually educated me a lot on things like wood tones and like what does a wood sound like, and differences in tubes, like what's a Class A versus a Class AB amplifier versus a solid state. I kind of really educated myself, and that whole magazine was really just about educating people. It wasn't even like, hey, we're going to try and be all wacky and kooky and look at my weirdness. Like, no, you guys need to know this stuff. Here's how it works.
Sure. It
was like that, and then it was really kind of it wasn't in a very dry kind of presentation, but it was really interesting and educational, and that's something that I think is really cool. I think nowadays I almost can feel, and I still have a subscription to Guitar World.
Yeah, me too.
But it's one of those things that I can almost feel the please look at me in some of the magazines that they put out. It's like they go back to the well with another Van Halen, another Jimmy Page cover.
Oh well, there's always been the trot out the dead guys.
Yeah, the Hendrix reissue.
I mean, they've done that,
or Clapton for the 70th time, or something like that. Stuff that they know people will buy, that kind of thing. But I can almost feel like the desperation of that. And I think that comes from the fact that maybe the guitar community is really not very one directional anymore, and I think also they got competition from everybody in the world because every YouTube channel that's guitar focused is going to have some kind of unique niche that they're filling. Right. So how do you do all things to all people when there's 1,000 other people? You got to
compete with YouTube channel. You got YouTube channels and podcasts.
Yeah, exactly. There's bastards in the podcasts.
I know everybody's
killing guitar
magazines.
Into it. I swear.
Who do those guys think they are?
But it's really tough, for that. But that's another thing. It's kind of like newspapers. I don't want to live in a world where there's no guitar magazines. I don't want to live in a world where Guitar World doesn't exist, where Guitar Player doesn't exist. But I mean, I don't know that there's a future there. Because you and I grew up on guitar magazines. That was a big part of our lives. But I don't think that a 19-year-old or 18-year-old sees a guitar magazine as an important thing to them.
I haven't checked my subscription, but I'm sure that you also get access to the website or something to that effect. There's got to be some sort of combo.
They're really doing they're pushing the YouTube channels for those guys, which makes a lot of sense because that's where people
that's monetized.
That's where people are too. People are going to be on YouTube looking for stuff. They're not. There was a time where you had to go to the Guitar World website to see the videos. But now they just basically put everything
It's
up on
on
YouTube.
But YouTube has some sort of monetization, I think, or
Yeah.
so I've been told.
Yeah,
So I guess that makes sense now.
And that's just where the content's going to get seen because they put it on their website.
Yeah.
They're going to have to they have to make a YouTube video to tell people to go to their website, and then everyone's like, "Well, I'm on YouTube. I'm just going to watch it here."
I still like getting the magazine. I like.
Me too.
I like the feel of the pages.
Yeah.
I like.
You know what's funny though? And I think that's one thing that's tough as you get older is
tactile.
you have to recognize that that's just something that means something to us because our generation grew up with that. But there's someone younger, there's like no connection to that. There's no reason.
Yeah.
There's nothing. There's no emotional attachment to seeing paper. That doesn't mean anything to them. It's
going to be very. Yeah, I definitely have thoughts about that. That might even be for another podcast.
Yeah. Is with the sadness, just getting into the sadness.
Or just you and I work in a very youth-oriented industry.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, not completely because there's still the old guy from El Dorado Hills that's retired.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's
Honest
kind of a
Harley that plays
50-50 because
blues,
I think the old guys now are people in their 50s who grew up listening to Motley Crue and Rat and Def Leppard and who want to learn that stuff now. You know what I mean?
How many 40 to 60 something students do you have that want to shred?
Yeah, most of I say that half my students are that guy.
So
you know
that's
what I mean?
great, right?
And the other half are young teenage kids who want to learn how to play, and then I have a small percentage who are like, not really into music. They're kind of just because they have something that they need an activity sort of thing, and that's a tough one.
Right, or maybe they're into something else, and then they have to,
their
and
parents
that's
tell
fine
them they have to
too.
play an instrument or something.
We just got to find out what that is.
Yeah.
And, I get that. Totally.
But I mean, that fealty to that, the whole guitar community thing and like wanting to know more is not something I think that there's a small percentage of young people who are going to pick that up and they'll go to the Guitar World website or they'll go to the Guitar World YouTube channel, and that's where they're going to get that filled. They're not going to go and subscribe to Guitar World magazines. They probably don't subscribe to any magazines. That's not something that's a part. Why would you do that when there's the internet? You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's very weird. And the whole, for me, when I want to support something, I spend money on it so that the creators can.
Yeah, can keep making their money. It makes all the sense in the world.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean? That's I don't know. Anyway, that's probably a good place to wrap up there. So, all right, thank you so much for listening to the Rock. What's the name of our podcast?
It's called Rock Guitar Confidential with Scott and Ryan. Thanks everybody out there.
I'm going to stop doing these closes, by the way, as I can never get any of the words in the right
we should
order.
flip a coin or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So all you guys, thanks so much for tuning in. Beware if you see 3 red laser dots creep up to your forehead.
That being said, you could very easily fix the entire major film franchise if you let the just blow your brains out.
And I'm gonna.
That's
Yep. So thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time.
All right, bye.
All right, bye.